dream destinations, exceptional cruises, polar adventures. Welcome to Beyond the Horizon, the podcast that takes you where the journey truly begins. A production of Area Voyages.
Imagine just, casually writing a check for $840,000.
Right, like it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And no, you aren't buying a piece of prime real estate. You aren't acquiring some tech startup. And you aren't purchasing a fleet of luxury cars. You are literally buying a vacation.
A very specific kind of vacation.
Very specific. You are buying up to 140 days of just total uncompromising insulation from the friction of daily life. I mean, you know how tiring it is to constantly calculate costs in your head while trying to relax?
Oh, it's the worst.
It is. You finally get away, you're sitting by a pool, the sun is shining, and someone comes up and asks if you want another drink. And your brain immediately just does this involuntary math.
Yeah, the mental spreadsheet opens up.
Exactly. You think well, that's $20 plus the automatic gratuity, and I already had one at lunch, and we're doing that expensive specialty dinner tonight. It's just completely exhausting.
It really is. It defeats the whole purpose of getting away.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into the mathematically audacious business model that serves as the ultimate antidote to that specific kind of vacation anxiety. We are exploring a concept that I think most people assume they understand, but they rarely see pushed to its absolute limit, which is the true all-inclusive experience.
Yeah, because it's a term that has been so heavily diluted by the travel industry over the years.
Totally.
When most people hear all-inclusive, they picture, a crowded mega resort somewhere in the Caribbean, watered-down whale drinks in those little plastic cups, and a buffet that's been sitting out under heat lamps for like 3 hours.
Yeah, the dreaded buffet line.
Right. But there is a massive structural difference between a marketing buzzword designed to sell budget travel and a deeply engineered economic model that's actually designed to deliver absolute cognitive relief.
And to really understand how that model functions under the hood, we are grounding today's deep dive in this remarkably thorough piece of source material. We have our hands on an extensive 2026 guide compiled by Yvonne Jr. Blanchette from Area Voyages, and it's titled The Ultimate Regent Seven Seas Cruise Guide.
It's an incredible resource. Very detailed.
It's massive. So our mission today is to deconstruct what it actually means to be the most inclusive luxury cruise line in the world. We are not just going to, read off a list of amenities.
No, that would be boring.
Right. We want to look under the hood. We want to understand the numbers, the psychology, the naval architecture, and honestly, the sheer logistical miracles required to make an operation like this function smoothly.
And setting the proper framework right out of the gate here is essential, because Regent Seven Seas isn't just selling a luxury cruise.
Right.
The physical ship, the exotic destinations, the high-end, those are really just the delivery mechanisms. What they are actually selling, and what they charge a very high premium for, is the complete elimination of decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue, yeah.
They act as a benchmark for the entire luxury travel industry, because they push this concept of removing friction to its absolute logical extreme.
I like to think of it like this. Most modern cruises operate a lot like a freemium app on your phone.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like, they are relatively cheap to download, or in this case, to board the ship. But once you are inside the ecosystem, you pay for every single feature. You pay to unlock the good restaurants. You pay to use the fast Wi-Fi. You pay for the premium drinks.
Microtransactions everywhere.
Exactly. The Regent model is completely different. They operate like an enterprise software license.
Right.
The upfront cost is massive, and it can definitely induce some serious sticker shock, but that initial payment unlocks every single capability across the board without any microtransactions. It's like they hand you the keys to a floating city on day one and say, don't worry about it.
But to build a floating city that operates on an enterprise model, complete with a practically one-to-one staff ratio that requires a very specific corporate foundation.
You can't just wing it.
No. You don't just wake up one day, buy a boat, and decide to offer unlimited premium amenities without a massive, highly capitalized infrastructure backing you up. So to understand how a benchmark like this is born, we really have to trace its corporate DNA.
So let's wind the clock back to 1992. The source material pinpoints this as sort of the genesis of the modern brand, starting with this crucial merger. You had Radisson Cruises joining forces with Seven Seas Cruises.
Right.
But the names of those two smaller entities aren't really the most important part of the story here. The really vital detail is who was holding the purse strings, which was the Carlson Group.
And that is the pivotal factor. The Carlson Group was, and still is, a massive global hospitality conglomerate. I mean, they were the parent company of Radisson Hotels, among many other vendors.
Right, they have deep pockets.
Exactly. In the cruise industry, a lot of legacy brands started as these scrappy maritime operations. You know, shipping companies that slowly figured out they could make more money carrying passengers than cargo. And they eventually transitioned into luxury travel over decades.
It's like a slow evolution.
Yeah. But Regent's DNA is entirely different. Because they had the financial backing of a global hospitality giant from day one, they were conceived and capitalized specifically as a dedicated ultra-luxury operation. They already understood lifetime customer value, they knew high-end service standards, and they had global supply chains figured out.
And they also clearly had the capital to take some massive experimental swings right out of the gate, because the guide points out this fascinating piece of maritime history regarding a ship that Radisson Cruises brought into that 1992 merger, which was the Radisson Diamond.
Oh, the Radisson Diamond. Such an interesting ship.
It's wild. This wasn't a standard cruise ship at all. It was the industry's only twin-hulled catamaran-style cruise vessel. Now, when most people picture a catamaran, you picture a small sailboat you rent on a beach, but this was a massive luxury passenger ship built on two hulls.
Yeah, it utilized a technology called SWAF, which stands for Small Waterplane Area Twin Hull.
Okay, Small Waterplane Area Twin Hull.
Right. And the engineering theory behind it was actually quite brilliant for the luxury market. By resting the massive superstructure of the ship on two narrow struts that connect down to submerged submarine-like hulls, you drastically reduce the surface area of the ship that actually interacts with the waves.
So it's more stable.
Unprecedented stability. In rough seas, the Radisson Diamond barely rolled at all. Furthermore, a catamaran footprint is incredibly wide, meaning they could offer massive interior spaces, wider corridors, and way larger suites than a traditional monohull ship of the same exact length.
I mean, that sounds like the perfect luxury vessel. Why aren't all cruise ships built like that?
Well, in terms of passenger comfort, it was phenomenal. But in terms of hydrodynamics and maritime economics, it had some very distinct limitations.
Like fuel costs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pushing two massive hulls through the water is way less fuel efficient, and it severely limited the ship's top speed. But the reason this is so important to their corporate history is that it proves their willingness to completely break the mold.
They weren't afraid to try something crazy.
Right. They were experimenting with naval architecture not to pack more people onto the ship, which is usually the mainstream industry's goal, but to fundamentally alter the spatial experience of the guest. That dedication to space over density is a through line that defines them to this very day.
And so, as they move through the late 90s and early 2000s, launching more traditional but still highly luxurious ships like the Navigator, Mariner, and Voyager, they kind of hit a point where the corporate branding was actually holding them back.
Yeah, the Hotel Association.
Right. The guide highlights 2006 as a major turning point. They completely dropped the Radisson name and rebranded purely as Regent Seven Seas Cruises.
And that makes total sense. If you are attempting to position yourself as the absolute, undisputed pinnacle of ultra-luxury at sea, having an association with a widespread hotel chain, even a premium one, creates brand confusion.
You don't want someone confusing your floating mansion with an airport hotel.
Exactly. You don't want a prospective guest equating the $100,000 suite they're about to book with an airport hotel they stayed at during a stressful business trip. Dropping the hotel moniker allowed them to forge a clean, singular identity that existed exclusively in the ultra-luxury maritime space.
And that repositioning clearly worked because it set the stage for one of the most significant corporate acquisitions in modern cruise history.
Oh.
In 2014, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, or NCLH, purchased Regent's parent company for $3.025 billion.
$3 billion.
It's a staggering amount of money. And honestly, in almost any other industry, a massive corporate buyout like that is usually a complete disaster for a boutique luxury product.
It usually is. The standard corporate playbook when a massive conglomerate buys a luxury brand is to immediately look for, synergies.
Oh, I hate that word, synergies.
Right, it's just corporate speak for cutting costs. They try to streamline supply chains, standardize the product, use cheaper materials, and leverage the prestige of the acquired brand to sell a diluted product to a much wider audience. It happens in fashion, it happens in food, and it definitely happens in travel.
But the guide is very clear that NCLH took the exact opposite approach here.
They did. NCLH recognized that Regent's value wasn't in its mass market appeal. Its value was strictly tied to its uncompromising exclusivity. Instead of stripping the brand for parts to improve quarterly margins, NCLH treated Regent as this untouchable halo brand.
So they didn't mess with the recipe.
No, they essentially built a firewall around Regent's operations. What that $3 billion acquisition provided was just a massive infusion of capital. It gave Regent the financial firepower to design and launch the Explora class of ships, starting with the Seven Seas Explorer in 2016, which the industry famously dubbed the most luxurious ship ever built.
So all this corporate maneuvering, the rebranding, the billions in backing, it all culminated in the ability to fund a highly specific, mathematically complex business model. Let's really dig into the economics and the psychology of this true all-inclusive approach, because this is where the spreadsheet meets human behavior.
To do that, we have to define exactly what the baseline fare covers, according to the 2026 AirII Voyages guide. The foundational layer of inclusion covers things that many premium lines actually still charge for.
Like what?
For instance, all dining across every single venue on the ship is included. There are 0 cover charges, even in the specialty stay houses or the high-end French restaurants.
Which is wild, because usually those are the money makers on a ship. And you also have unlimited premium spirits, fine wines, and craft cocktails available constantly, both at the bars and stocked daily right in your suite.
Yeah, no limits.
Plus, they include unlimited, fleet-wide Starlink Wi-Fi, which completely changes the connectivity game at sea. And heavily contributing to that cognitive relief we talked about, all gratuities are permanently baked into the fare. You are never subtly pressured to hand over a $5 bill to a bartender or leave an envelope for your room steward at the end of the voyage.
And that baseline alone creates a highly luxurious environment. But those features are increasingly common in the upper premium tier, where Regent completely separates from the pack. The inclusions that fundamentally alter the economic math of the vacation are the shore excursions and the international flights.
Let's tackle the excursions first, because when I saw this in the source material, it literally blew my mind. They include unlimited shore excursions in every single port of call.
Every single one.
Most mainstream cruises sell excursions as their primary profit center. They lure you in with a cheap ticket, like $500, and then charge you $200 a day to actually go see the places you sailed to. The ARA guide breaks down the hard numbers here. On a longer luxury voyage, paying out of pocket for comprehensive excursions can easily add $3,000 to $10,000 per person.
The logistics of offering unlimited excursions are just staggering. Imagine a ship with 700 guests pulling into Rome. The cruise line has to pre-negotiate and prepay for dozens of luxury motor coaches, hundreds of private guides, exclusive access to museums, and bespoke culinary tours, ensuring there is enough capacity for every single guest to do something meaningful without charging them a dime on board.
And then there are the flights. The guide specifies that for guests staying in concierge suites and above, round-trip business class airfare is included on most international sailings, along with pre-cruise hotel stays.
That's a massive inclusion.
Huge. Business class from North America to a port in Europe or Asia can range from $4,000 to $8,000 per person easily.
So when a consumer first looks at the upfront sticker price of a Regent voyage, it is undeniably high. But you have to subtract the $8,000 in airfare, the $10,000 in excursions, the pre-cruise luxury hotel, the nightly premium dining, the top-shelf alcohol, and the gratuity.
Right, you have to do the reverse math.
Exactly. When you aggregate the individual retail cost of those components, the economic equation of the initial fare shifts from seemingly astronomical to surprisingly rational.
Hang on, though. I have a question about this. If I am paying this massive baseline fare that absorbs the cost of unlimited excursions and top-shelf liquor, aren't I basically subsidizing the guy in the suite next to me who drinks 4 vintage martinis a day and takes every single grueling 8-hour excursion available?
That's a very common question.
Right. Like, if I am a traveler who just wants to read a novel on my balcony or order a coffee and maybe take one gentle walking tour a week, I am mathematically getting ripped off. Is this model actually a good deal for the passive traveler?
Well, if you are looking strictly at a financial ledger, trying to extract $1 of tangible value for every single dollar spent, you are entirely correct. The passive traveler is economically subsidizing the highly active traveler. But that perspective kind of misunderstands the psychology of the ultra-luxury consumer.
How so?
For this specific demographic, the goal is not to break even on the cost of amenities.
So what are they actually paying for then, if not the amenities?
They are paying a premium to hedge against their own mental fatigue. As we mentioned, decision fatigue is a rigorously studied psychological phenomenon. Every time a human being has to weigh a cost against a benefit, like, should we do the expensive helicopter tour over the glaciers or just the cheap bus ride to the visitor center?
Should we get the vintage Bordeaux or the house wine?
Exactly. Every time you do that, the brain burns glucose. It expends energy. The constant micro-calculations of value diminish your capacity to actually enjoy the experience.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Most cruises force you to be an accountant while you're sitting there wearing a swimsuit.
Precisely. The luxury consumer willingly pays an inflated universal premium upfront to achieve total liberation from financial decision-making during the trip. Once the cruise is booked and paid for, the financial architecture of the vacation is completely invisible.
You never see a bill.
You never sign a receipt. You never check a folio on the TV screen in your room to see how much your bar tab has accumulated. You simply exist in the space, say yes to whatever interests you in the moment, and enjoy the world. You are literally buying the insurance policy against your own stress.
And from the cruise line's perspective, this enterprise software model is brilliant for cash flow, isn't it? They aren't just giving away excursions, they are securing massive upfront capital.
Oh, absolutely.
By standardizing this high fare, they pull in millions of dollars in revenue months, sometimes years, before the ship even sets sail. They earn interest on that money, and they can leverage it to negotiate massive bulk discounts with airlines for those business class seats and with local tour operators for the excursions.
It is a beautifully engineered financial loop. And this philosophy of removing all friction and limitation extends far beyond the spreadsheet. It actually dictates the physical design, the literal steel and glass architecture of the ships themselves. Specifically, it dictates the spatial geometry of where the guests actually sleep.
Which brings us to the architecture of exclusivity. On a ship, physical space is the ultimate non-negotiable luxury. You can always buy better wine or hire better chefs, but once the hull is welded, you cannot manufacture more square footage.
No, space is finite.
Right. And the guide outlines an absolute rule across the entire Regent fleet that fundamentally breaks the standard cruise industry business model. There are 0 standard cabins, there are 0 interior rooms, and there are 0 rooms without a private furnished veranda. Every single guest is in a suite.
And to understand why that is so radical, you really have to look at the mainstream cruise economy. A massive 5,000 passenger ship is heavily reliant on interior cabins rooms, entirely devoid of windows, located deep in the central quarters of the ship.
I call those the floating closets.
That's exactly what they are. The cruise line sells these rooms at rock bottom, deeply discounted prices, just to get bodies onto the ship. They rely on those thousands of budget-conscious passengers to walk out of their windowless rooms and spend money in the casino, at the bars, and in the shops to make the voyage profitable. Regent completely rejects that mathematical premise.
They don't even play the volume game. Let's walk through how they allocate space, starting at the absolute bottom. The lowest tier you can possibly book, the quote-unquote entry-level accommodation, is the deluxe veranda suite. The guide notes this starts at 307 square feet of interior space.
Which is huge for an entry-level room.
It is. To put that in context, that entry-level room is significantly larger than the upgraded balcony staterooms on most premium lines. And even at this absolute baseline, you are getting marble bathrooms, a separate sitting area, a walk-in closet, elite slumber beds, and a fully stocked complimentary bar that is replenished daily.
And because of the spatial geometry required to give every single room a balcony, the ships are designed entirely differently from the ground up. You don't have massive, dark inner corridors. The ships are narrower, or the internal space is dedicated to massive public venues and towering atriums, rather than packing in more sleeping quarters.
But 307 square feet is just where it begins. The scale ramps up incredibly fast. You step up to the concierge suites, which the guide indicates are the sweet spot for many travelers.
That's where you get the hotel stay.
Right. Moving into this tier triggers that pre-cruise luxury hotel stay we discussed. Inside the room, it adds priority online reservations for dining and excursions, an illy espresso machine, cashmere blankets, and high-end binoculars for wildlife viewing right from your balcony.
Then you move into the penthouse suites, which push the footprint up to 450 square feet. The balconies alone on these suites can be nearly 200 square feet, which is larger than a standard interior cabin on a mainstream ship.
That's insane. Your balcony is bigger than someone else's whole room.
Exactly. You gain a distinct separation between the living and sleeping areas, and you unlock dedicated butler service. The butler handles your unpacking, coordinates your in-suite dining course by course, and manages your entire itinerary.
And if you want to truly throw the budget out the window, you move into the signature suites. Now we are talking about 2 full bedrooms, 2.5 marble bathrooms, sprawling wraparound balconies, and literal crystal chandeliers hanging in the living space. It basically ceases to feel like a cabin and becomes a floating luxury apartment.
But all of this spatial progression is really just the build-up to the pinnacle of modern maritime architecture. On the Explora class ships, so the Explorer, Splendor, and Grandeur, the top accommodation is known as the Regent Suite.
I have to admit, when I read the specifications for the Regent Suite in the ARIA Voyages text, I had a hard time visualizing it on a ship. This suite is over 4,443 square feet.
It's massive.
It is positioned at the very top of the ship, at the bow on deck 14. This means the guests in this suite have the exact same unobstructed panoramic forward view as the captain on the bridge.
The list of bespoke inclusions in that suite is almost surreal. It features 2 massive bedrooms, a living room with a custom Steinway grand piano, and millions of dollars in original curated art.
A Steinway piano on a ship.
Yeah. The wraparound veranda includes a glass-enclosed parlor and a private, heated mini pool overlooking the ocean.
But the most staggering feature is the private spa. Inside this 4,400 square foot room is a dedicated spa retreat. It has its own personal sauna, a multi-jet shower, and heated tile relaxation loungers. And because the Enterprise model dictates absolute inclusion, the guests staying in the Regent Suite receive complimentary, unlimited in-suite spa treatments for the duration of the voyage.
You never even have to leave your room to go to the spa.
No, you literally just call your personal therapist and they arrive to give you a massage in your own private facility.
However, the guide reveals that this 4,400 square foot suite is actually about to be eclipsed. We have to discuss the incoming hardware. In December 2026, Regent is launching a brand new vessel, the Seven Seas Prestige, and the Regent Suite on that new ship will be roughly 9,000 square feet.
9,000 square feet. Let's just pause and translate that into reality. 9,000 square feet is not a luxury hotel room. That is significantly larger than a multi-million-dollar suburban mansion.
Oh, easily.
I mean, think about it. A typical spacious 2-car garage is roughly 400 square feet. This suite is the equivalent of 22 2-car garages bolted together, suspended 14 decks above the ocean, moving at 20 knots. It's crazy.
From an engineering standpoint, placing a 9,000 square foot open concept space at the highest point of a ship's bow is a monumental challenge. It completely alters the ship's center of gravity and requires immense structural reinforcement of the superstructure to prevent the vessel from becoming top-heavy. They literally have to engineer the entire forward half of the ship just to accommodate this single sprawling residence.
But a 9,000 square foot floating mansion is really just empty hardware without the human element to animate it. If you scale up the rooms to this unprecedented degree, you have to scale up the service infrastructure to match. You can't put someone in a 9,000 square foot suite and then make them wait in line for a buffet.
No, that breaks the illusion instantly.
But, which brings us to the operational reality of running what is basically a floating private club.
And the core metric that defines service in the cruise industry is the crew-to-guest ratio. The source material outlines that Regent maintains a nearly 1-to-1 ratio across its fleet. For every passenger on board, there's essentially one crew member dedicated to the operation of the ship.
Wow, because on a mainstream megaship, you might have, what, a 1-to-3 or even a 1-to-4 ratio.
Right, and that mathematical difference fundamentally alters the entire service dynamic. On a massive ship with 5,000 guests and 1,500 crew, the staff is inherently engaged in crowd control. Their primary objective is processing.
Moving people from A to B.
Exactly. They are trying to process thousands of people through the dining rooms, process them onto the tender boats, process their luggage. It is basically an industrial assembly line disguised as hospitality.
But at 1-to-1, the friction of processing just disappears.
Exactly. At a 1-to-1 ratio, basic operational efficiency is a given. The focus of the staff shifts entirely from crowd control to deep intuitive personalization. The ship is structurally designed to be intimate. There are entire networks of hidden corridors and galleys below decks that allow the massive crew to move seamlessly without congesting the guest areas.
They just appear when you need them.
Right. The bartender isn't trying to serve 50 people at once, they're serving 6. Therefore, they have the time to memorize your exact cocktail preference on the first day. Your room attendant learns your schedule and configures your suite while you were at breakfast. The atmosphere stops feeling like a commercial cruise and transitions into the realm of a private country club.
Nowhere is that private club atmosphere more critical or honestly more complex to execute than in the culinary ecosystem. The guide outlines a spectacular lineup of dining venues. You have Compass Rose, which is the sprawling, open-seating main restaurant.
Beautiful venue.
And then there are the specialty venues. You've got Prime 7, the signature American steakhouse, Chartreuse and Signatures offering refined French gastronomy, Pacific Rim featuring a Pan-Asian menu and complex sushi programs, and Sept Marie at La Veranda, where a casual daytime space transforms into an authentic Italian dining experience at night.
And remember, because of the all-inclusive enterprise model, there are 0 cover charges at any of these specialty venues.
Which fundamentally changes how the kitchens operate. On a normal ship, specialty restaurants are bottlenecked by price.
Right, the cost keeps the crowds away.
Exactly. The cruise line knows only a certain percentage of people will pay the $50 cover charge for the steakhouse, so the kitchen only prepares for that small fraction. But on Regent, the steakhouse is completely free. Any guests can go. How does the kitchen pace the meals and manage inventory when every single passenger has unrestricted access to the most expensive food on the ship?
It requires an incredibly sophisticated predictive algorithm and a massive culinary staff. The galleys have to be sized to accommodate a surge of diners in any specific venue on any given night. But the true logistical miracle isn't the pacing, it is the supply chain. The guide specifically highlights that Prime 7 serves USDA prime beef that has been dry aged for a minimum of 28 days.
Okay, let's unpack the reality of that for a second. Dry aging beef is a highly sensitive chemical process requiring precise temperature and humidity control, and they are serving that on a ship that is constantly moving across 300 different global ports.
It's wild to think about.
It is. How on earth do you maintain the supply chain to serve perfect 28-day aged USDA prime beef in the middle of the Indian Ocean or like off the coast of Antarctica?
Well, you certainly cannot rely on local markets and random ports to source hundreds of pounds of specific premium grade protein. Regent operates a phenomenally complex maritime supply chain. They secure massive global sourcing contracts years in advance.
So it's all planned out way ahead of time.
Oh, completely. The lower decks of these ships house cavernous, highly regulated cold storage holds designed to hold vast inventories at exact microclimates. They utilize container ships to pre-position shipments of specific ingredients at strategic ports around the globe. It is a military-grade logistical operation deployed entirely to ensure that a dry-aged steak or a delicate piece of sashimi tastes identically perfect whether you are docked in Monaco or sailing the Drake Passage.
That is astonishing. And they don't just focus on feeding you, they focus on culinary education and exclusivity too. The guide details a venue called the Study on the Explora class ships. This is a private 12-guest dining room hidden between the prime restaurants.
Very exclusive.
Very. It is specifically reserved for guests of the Regent Suite or VIPs. It features multi-million-dollar original art and meals served on custom Bernardoed fine china. It is a masterclass in creating a tier of exclusivity within an already exclusive environment.
They also have the Culinary Arts Kitchen, which is a brilliant addition. Instead of just watching a chef do a demonstration, which is what most cruises do, they have built a professional-grade teaching kitchen with 18 individual cooking stations. Guests take hands-on, regional cooking classes designed to mirror the culinary traditions of the exact ports they are sailing through that week.
So it actually connects the ship to the destination.
It perfectly connects the hardware of the ship to the culture of the destination.
And naturally, a private club has to have a focus on wellness. The text mentions the Canyon Ranch Spa Club on the Explorer and globally inspired full-service spas across the rest of the fleet. The overarching philosophy is holistic indulgence, feeding you flawlessly, educating you, and then physically restoring you.
So we have established the mechanics here. We have the 9,000 square foot suites, the 1-to-1 crew ratio, the global supply chains for dry-aged beef, and the complete elimination of financial friction.
The ultimate setup.
Right. And experiencing this for a 7-day jaunt through the Mediterranean is wonderful. But the true stress test of this massive operational infrastructure, the ultimate proof of concept for the Regent model, is when passengers decide to essentially move in.
Which brings us to the long game. We are talking about grand voyages and world cruises. This is an arena of the travel industry where Regent exercises almost absolute dominance. A world cruise is the ultimate luxury flex.
It really is. The guide details the specifications for the upcoming 2027 World Cruise aboard the Seven Seas Splendor. We are looking at a single continuous voyage of up to 140 nights.
Wow.
The entry-level pricing for this 5-month journey starts at $91,500 per person, and the top suites for that same 140-day journey peak at over $840,000 per person.
Again, $840,000. Just write the check. But as we discussed earlier, if you actually run the math on value compounding over 5 months, you understand exactly why they dominate this hyper-niche market.
Yeah, let's do that math for a second. Imagine you book a 140-day trip on a luxury line that provides beautiful suites and great service, but operates on an a la carte model where excursions, premium alcohol, and specialty dining are all extra.
It would be a financial nightmare. I mean, if a single standard shore excursion costs a conservative $150 a day over 140 days, that is $21,000 just for basic group tours.
And that's conservative.
Right. If you want private cars or helicopter tours, you are easily looking at $50,000 to $80,000 in excursion fees alone. Add in 3 glasses of nice wine at dinner every night, a few cocktails by the pool, specialty coffees in the morning, and the required gratuities for 5 straight months, the ancillary costs would compound into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And even for the ultra-wealthy, who can easily afford those ancillary costs without blinking, the friction of managing that daily ledger for 140 days is psychologically taxing. You would spend 5 months signing receipts and reviewing folios.
It becomes a part-time job.
Exactly. Regent's model neutralizes that entirely. The massive upfront check secures total financial predictability. You can step off the ship in 60 different countries, take premium guided tours in every single one, drink vintage champagne every evening, and never sign a single piece of paper. For someone spending $1 million on a vacation, that absolute lack of friction is the true luxury.
And the physical hardware of the ships is apparently so well engineered that people genuinely don't want to leave. The source material outlines a fascinating fleet dynamic that illustrates this perfectly. In late 2026, the Seven Seas Navigator is leaving the Regent fleet. The Navigator is their oldest and smallest ship, carrying about 490 guests. But it isn't being sent to a scrapyard, and it isn't being sold to a budget cruise line.
No, it is being transferred to a brand called Crescent Seas, which is pioneering a completely different model. Luxury residences at sea. They're actually converting the vessel so that passengers can permanently purchase the suites as floating condominiums.
I find that incredibly telling. It's like watching a luxury hotel realize its bones are so good that it can instantly transform into high-end permanent real estate.
It really speaks to the build quality.
Right. The spatial ratios, the plumbing, the structural integrity of the suites. It proves that the ship was originally built to a standard that supports permanent year-round habitation.
And as the older, more intimate Navigator transitions out, the future of the brand arrives. In December 2026, the Seven Seas Prestige enters service.
We talked about its 9,000 square foot suite earlier, but the ship itself is massive too, right? 77,000 gross tons carrying 850 guests.
Yeah, the Prestige represents a definitive changing of the guard. It is the first of a completely new class of ships, with a second confirmed for delivery in 2029 and 2 more arriving by 2036.
Yeah.
What we are witnessing is the brand slowly, methodically scaling up the physical size of its vessels.
But keeping the space per guest the same.
Exactly. They are meticulously maintaining that incredible space-to-guest ratio. They are betting billions of dollars that the future of ultra-luxury isn't found in micro ships with 200 people, but in slightly larger platforms that have the sheer physical volume required to support sprawling 9,000 square foot suites, diverse, no-cover culinary ecosystems, and massive spas.
So with ticket prices approaching $1 million for world cruises, ships growing to 77,000 tons, and this militant, uncompromising dedication to including absolutely every logistical detail in the baseline fare, it raises a critical question. Is Regent truly the right fit for every luxury traveler?
It absolutely is not. And the beauty of the 2026 ARA Voyages Guide is that Yvonne Junior Blanchette provides a highly detailed, objective, competitive analysis to help travelers answer exactly that question. Regent is engineered for a very specific persona.
Let's define that persona. The ideal Regent guest is an experienced luxury traveler who places the highest premium on 0 post-booking decisions. They want the enterprise software model. They are also people who take shore excursions seriously. They want to actively explore the ports of call, not just admire the coastline from their balcony. They are international flyers who genuinely value the logistics of having the cruise line handle their business class airfare and transfers. And finally, there are travelers who prefer a ship in that 700 to 850 guest range because that critical mass provides multiple dining venues, larger theaters, and expansive public spaces that tiny boutique ships simply can't physically support.
But to understand the true value proposition of Regent, we really have to look at the alternatives. Where does Regent fall short for certain travelers? The guide meticulously contrasts Regent with 4 major competitors in the ultra-luxury space. So let's begin with Seabourn.
Okay, Seabourn is a legendary name in the industry. The guide notes they have nearly 4 decades of operational heritage, so they know exactly what they are doing.
They do, but they offer a fundamentally different philosophy based on scale. Seabourn's ocean ships are significantly smaller than Regent's, carrying roughly 264 to 600 guests. They have a phenomenal culinary partnership with chef Thomas Keller, and they operate a highly robust polar expedition program.
But there's a catch with the pricing, right?
Yes. The critical economic distinction is that Seabourn does not include shore excursions in their standard fare.
Hang on, this is the perfect counterexample to the Regent model. If I am an ultra-wealthy traveler who just wants absolute peace and quiet, if my goal is to sit on my balcony, read a biography, enjoy incredible food, and literally never set foot on land for a shore excursion, am I making a mistake by booking Regent?
Based on the economics, yes. If your priority is absolute intimacy and you have zero intention of utilizing the excursion program, you're essentially overpaying on Regent. You're paying a massive premium to fund a global infrastructure of luxury motor coaches and private guides that you will never, ever use.
Just subsidizing everyone else's tours.
Exactly. In that highly specific scenario, Seabourn is the financially and experientially superior choice. Their smaller 264 guest ships provide a purer, quieter retreat, and their a la carte excursion model means you aren't subsidizing tours you have no interest in taking.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, what if a traveler is heavily focused on remote, rugged destinations rather than like the Mediterranean or the Caribbean? What about Silversea?
Silversea is the undisputed choice if your focus is true remote exploration. The guide highlights that they operate the largest dedicated expedition fleet in the luxury segment, offering the broadest polar destination coverage in the world.
So they go everywhere.
Everywhere. And they actually do offer an incredible door-to-door fare that includes private executive transfers from your home to the airport, which is a fantastic logistical inclusion. However, their ocean ships sit in a different size category, and their onboard culture is heavily anchored by their SALT program, which stands for Sea and Land Taste, which deeply integrates local port culture into the culinary experience. It is a much more destination-immersed philosophy.
Then the guide brings up Explora Journeys. This is a much newer name in this space, right?
It is. Explora represents the contemporary evolution of luxury. They operate slightly larger ships, hovering around 922 guests. Their aesthetic is heavily influenced by modern, high-end European boutique hotels rather than traditional maritime design.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's very sleek. And a unique inclusion they offer is full access to their thermal spa facilities within the base fare. However, as the guide points out, because they are a newer brand, they inherently lack the decades of operational heritage and refined logistical machinery that a giant like Regent has perfected over 30 years. They are sort of the new, stylish kids on the block.
And finally, we have to talk about Oceania Cruises. This is a fascinating comparison because Oceania is actually Regent's sister brand.
Exactly. They are both owned by the same massive parent company, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings.
So how do they differentiate the two so they don't just, cannibalize their own market?
They separate them by economic model and culinary focus. Oceania arguably holds the title for the strongest pure culinary focus in the upper premium segment, largely due to their foundational partnership with master chef Jacques Pepin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they sail incredible, long-form, exotic itineraries. But the structural difference is that Oceania is significantly less inclusive. On Oceania, shore excursions, premium beverage packages, and flights are available, but they are sold as a la carte packages. They are not a universal inclusion.
So if you are a massive foodie who wants the Jacques Pepin influence, and you don't mind sitting down with a calculator to figure out which beverage package makes sense for your drinking habits, Oceania is brilliant. But if you want the absolute uncompromising shield against every single logistical and financial detail of travel, Regent stands completely alone.
It all comes back to that core concept. Regent is engineered for the traveler who refuses to do the mental math.
So what does this all mean for the future of travel? As we pull all these threads together to wrap up this deep dive, the picture painted by the AREA Voyages guide is incredibly clear. Regent Seven Seas has not built its reputation, nor does it justify its staggering price points, simply by installing Italian marble bathrooms and pouring expensive champagne.
No, those elements are just the absolute baseline.
Right, they are the table stakes in this tier of the luxury market.
They establish their benchmark status through the systematic militant removal of friction. By absorbing the complexity of international flights, coordinating the pre-cruise hotels, organizing the massive logistics of global excursions, and utterly abolishing the concept of a final bill, they strip away the mechanics of traveling.
So you don't feel like you're traveling, you're just existing somewhere else.
Exactly. They leave the guest with nothing to do but actually experience the destination.
They literally hand you the keys to the floating city and tell you the tab is closed. But when we look at the trajectory of this brand, especially with the arrival of the massive Seven Seas Prestige in 2026,
it introduces a profoundly fascinating question to leave you with. We are looking at a ship with a 9,000 square foot suite. We are looking at a vessel with a 1-to-1 staff ratio, a dozen world-class restaurants with no cover charges, and absolute all-inclusive insulation from the mundane, frustrating realities of moving across the globe.
Are we reaching a point where the ultra-luxury ship itself basically supersedes the itinerary?
Exactly. Are we approaching an era where the ship becomes the primary destination and the 300 spectacular global ports rotating outside those floor-to-ceiling windows are simply serving as beautiful, ever-changing wallpaper for a perfectly curated, frictionless life at sea?
That is a wild paradigm-shifting thought. When the vehicle is more luxurious than the destination, the reason for traveling changes entirely. It is absolutely something for you to think about the next time you are planning a getaway, doing that involuntary math by the pool, and wondering exactly what it would cost to make all of those calculations permanently disappear. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the absolute limits of luxury travel. Keep exploring, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and we will catch you on the next one.
You've been listening to Beyond the Horizon, the podcast by AREA Voyages. The full article for this episode is available at www.areavoyages.com. Remember to like, share the podcast, and leave a review to help promote our work. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. Until next time, safe travels.